Hey everybody, happy Wednesday. So yesterday, when you watched the presentation about parts of a flower, you learned about the 5 main parts. So very quickly, we're just going to review those, and then we're going to talk about how that translates over to other types of plants. So again, we're just going to do a quick review of the parts of the flower and talk about that very, very shortly. Let me try and make that a little bit bigger. So again, flowers need 3 main things to live: water, oxygen, which is air, and light. The 5 main parts, remember some of the parts get really technical and really tiny, but we just picked 5 broad parts to talk about: the leaves, the roots, the stem, the seeds, and the petals. So the leaves, if we remember, catch the sunlight, and it also can kind of take in some air and water. Roots hold the plant down in the ground, and they also soak up nutrients and water out of the dirt and soil. The stem is what holds the whole thing together, basically. So think of how that flower right there, that part that goes straight up and down through the middle, is what holds the leaves together and the flower itself. The seeds are parts of the plant that are used to grow the plant elsewhere, to reproduce the plant. They can be moved in lots of different ways. The petals are, with flowers, they're the parts that attract bugs, they attract animals. They're the pretty part that we see. And so they help with the flowers being reproduced, meaning you get more flowers. So that is just a short overview of the flowers and plants. So how does that tie into plants? So think about the things that a flower needs to live, like air, water, sunlight. Think of the 5 main things that a flower has: the roots, the stem, the seeds. Those are just a few things. And then I want you to think about, for a second, think about a tree. More specifically, think about like an apple tree. Take just a minute, think about an apple tree. What grows on an apple tree? Easy question. Apples. So that tree, if you've ever seen an apple tree, sometimes they are tall, sometimes apple trees are kind of short. A lot of times they almost look like bushes if they grow thick enough. So apple trees can be in different shapes and sizes, of course. And so the way that they grow is very different depending on the tree. I'm going to show you a picture of an apple tree that you can pretty easily see what the parts are of this apple tree. So let me bring this up for you and share this screen with you so you can see, and we'll talk about this picture. Now remember, we talked about flowers. Now we're talking about a plant. This is the apple tree here. There's a nice little bench right there in front of it, so you can see the apples on that tree. And what I'm going to do is actually take my little stamper here and with my star, and we're going to think about where those parts, remember the parts from the flower, a lot of those carry over to other types of trees. So the stem, easy one right here, it's going to go right here. Let me see, I might can get do a better job of this. All right, the stem is that blue, where I just drew that blue square. Now on a tree, that would be the trunk. That's the big, thick part of the tree that holds it up out of the ground. Under the ground here, I'm going to make this kind of black gray looking box here. Under the ground, what is holding that apple tree in place? What is holding it in place? It's going to be the roots. Now, like the flowers, that the roots soak up the nutrients and soak up the water, and it also holds that flower down in the ground or down in the soil. That's exactly what the roots on a tree do. They do the same exact thing. They hold it in the soil, they hold it in the dirt, and they absorb the water and nutrients out of the soil and dirt. Okay. This one's an easy one. I'm going to put it in pink. The leaves. We can easily see the leaves on this tree. They're all over that tree. All those green parts are leaves. They're all over that tree. So you can see how they spread out and they absorb the sun, and they can also pick up water like from dew and some rain here and there. So those are the leaves. So we've got the stem, we've got the leaves, we've got the roots. What are we missing? We're missing petals and we're missing seeds. Well, if you've ever seen an apple blossom is what grows before the apple itself grows. Now, again, I'm going to show you a picture. Let's see if I can find a better picture here. Sorry about that. When an apple is growing, it basically makes like a little flower to start with. And you might see that on an apple tree that is getting ready to grow the apple, basically. And sorry about that. So give me just 1 second here to share that with you, and I will show you what that looks like, because they also make flowers before those apples grow. Did I just mistake myself? No, I did not. I'm sorry. I thought I made a mistake. So you can actually see on this picture right here where the blossom, the flower itself, and then the apple is growing, another apple is growing. So these trees bloom with flowers, and then the apples grow later on. Now, let's go back to our picture of our tree here. Let's go back to our picture of our tree. So we talked about where the roots are. We've talked about where the stem is. We've talked about the leaves. We just talked about the flower, the petal part. Now the tricky question is, where are the seeds? Well, in this case, those seeds are inside of those apples. You've eaten an apple. We've all eaten apples, and you find those little seeds in the apples. So inside those apples are the seeds that would spread out to grow more apple trees. So if you've ever been to an apple orchard, you might see apples laying on the ground that have fallen off the tree, that, maybe the wind blew too hard, or the apple may have gotten eaten by bugs or an animal or something. And those apples just lay on the ground and they kind of rot away. Well, what happens is that seed goes in the ground, and not always, but a lot of times that seed will start sprouting a new apple tree. Now, if it's in an apple orchard, like I know some of us, like in the fall, go to Skytop or Justice Orchards in North Carolina. A lot of us go up to places like that. Those places, they keep their orchards clean, and they keep it where these little sprouts aren't growing just out in the middle of nowhere. But take a tree like this, where there's nothing really around it, and it doesn't look like they're going to be harvesting a whole lot of apples. If an apple fell off that tree, rotted into the ground, I know that sounds really gross, and the seed went in the ground, it got the moisture, it got into the dirt, it got the nutrients it needs, it got the air it needs, that apple seed will likely grow up into being an apple tree. So you can see how some of the same parts that are on a flower, those 5 main things like the leaves and the stem and the roots, those are also found in other types of plants like trees. Think of bushes, think of shrubbery, think of course, other types of trees. Now, of course, not all trees have things like apples or oranges on them. So where do those seeds come from? Those are where we get acorns and walnuts. So think about when you see an acorn on the ground, that is a seed from an oak tree. So that is where that comes into play. So I want you to think about a flower and I want you to think about a tree. And that will be part of your learning check today, to compare them and compare and contrast them. Sorry. And you will see how these parts work the same. Maybe they may have different names, but they have the same purpose. And that is all for today.